All right, guys, so we just talked about how one of the first executive orders that Trump signed is to designate the Mexican drug cartels as terrorist organizations, which is a green light and a step in the direction of war with Mexico. Okay? Like literally day one stuff we're talking about here, and it's utterly terrifying, right? But guess what? We have more. Look at this. Trump's team wants Maduro to leave Venezuela. Yeah, I believe we have a term for that, don't we? When you want the regime to change. Now, you're an outsider. You're not a Venezuelan citizen. You're an outsider. You want the regime to change. It's almost like you want a coup. Is that the word I'm looking for? Yes, I think that's the word I'm looking for. So they want to do a coup of Venezuela. Here we go. The incoming Trump administration wants regime change in Venezuela, where dictator Nicolas Maduro stole his election, jailed a rival, and this month even threatened to invade the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. Now, let me just say up front, this from Axios, all of that is pathetic. Because what you're doing is you're providing the rationale and the justification for Trump saying, hey, I'm being the good guy. I'm just right. I'm just trying to bring justice to the situation. That's what they're doing by poisoning the well up front by saying this. Because what's the reality? Guys, don't take my word for this. Look it up. The United States funds 73% of the world's dictatorships. 73%. So the idea that we have some sort of principled opposition to dictatorships, and that's why we're so concerned, and that's why we need to do something in Venezuela, is preposterous. We don't give a fuck if there's a dictator somewhere, as long as they're good for business with us, right? That's the reality. So shame on them for rigging the deck up front in this article. They continue. Venezuela under Maduro has been a massive problem for Latin America and the U.S. It's accounted for the largest modern-day migration in the Western Hemisphere. Nearly 8 million people have fled Maduro's regime in the past decade. By the way, notice, do you see a mention of U.S. sanctions in that? Now, by the way, I'm not saying the sanctions are the only reason why Venezuela is struggling. In fact, I'm sure Maduro has massively contributed to Venezuela struggling colossally, right? Let's be clear about that up front. I'm not blaming it all on the sanctions. But certainly, the sanctions deserve some blame, right? Right? I mean, no honest person can deny that, right? There's not a single honest person who can deny that reality. But they don't mention it. It doesn't even get a mention more. Trump's team says it wants Maduro to go the way of recently toppled Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. So you want U.S.-funded jihadists who were formerly affiliated with al-Qaeda to overthrow Maduro? Is that what you're saying? Because that's who overthrew Assad. Again, don't take my word for it. You go read it yourself. And sometimes I say things on the show where even when it's coming out of my mouth, I'm like, damn, that doesn't sound right. But it's true. It's just we live in the most insane world imaginable. So when you say true things, sometimes it sounds like that can't be right, can it? It is. It is right. It's a formerly al-Qaeda affiliated jihadist group in Syria overthrew Assad. Again, this reminds me of when John Bolton in the first term said about Kim Jong-un, like, oh, we want to do the Libya model with Kim Jong-un. That was when Trump was in the middle of negotiating with Kim Jong-un, John Bolton, the neocon warmonger, was saying, we want to topple Kim Jong-un. We want to militarily topple him. That's what this saying reminds me of here. That's what this sentence reminds me of. Like, oh yeah, we want him to go the way of Assad. Again, these are just threats. You're just threatening to do regime change and do a coup. That's what you're doing. They continue. But regime change doesn't necessarily mean military action, Trump advisors say. Oh, here we go again. Guys, they did this in the first term. Do you remember? They pretended like this guy, Juan Guaido, won the election in Venezuela when he didn't. And they were just going around pretending like he was the president. He was hanging out in the U.S., going to like official state dinners and pretending to be a representative of Venezuela. It was all kabuki theater. He didn't win. We were just pretending the dude won when he didn't win and acting like, well, that's it. I guess Maduro's gone. Like, the imperial arrogance is astounding. Quote, we wouldn't mind one bit seeing Maduro being neighbors with Assad in Moscow, a Trump advisor involved with foreign policy discussions told Axios. During his campaign, Trump accused Maduro of intentionally sending criminal gangs such as Tren de Aragua to the U.S. Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure he was personally sending them off, giving them a little gift bag as he was sending them. Oil-rich, cash-poor Venezuela is governed by a narco-trafficking organization that has empowered itself as a nation-state. Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who once was targeted by a Venezuelan assassination plot, said Wednesday in his confirmation hearing to be Trump's Secretary of State. So in other words, the person Trump wants as Secretary of State in his confirmation hearing is like, wouldn't regime change be great in Venezuela? Shouldn't we overthrow that regime? Remember, Washington Post endorsed Marco Rubio. All the Republicans are going to vote for Marco Rubio, and even some of the Democrats are going to vote for Marco Rubio. So I love how somehow it's not controversial for the guy who's going to be Secretary of State to say, how about we add some more wars to our list of wars? What if we did that? It doesn't have to be a war, but we could do a war without doing a war. So again, a coup, right? You want to do a coup. Venezuela's closest ally is Cuba, America's oldest Latin American foe. Maduro's regime also is aligned with China, Russia, and Iran, which is building drones in Venezuela. Rubio testified. This is all fake, bro. That's all fake. It's all they're laying the groundwork to try to do another war, do regime change, topple another government. That's what this is. And they got Trump on board. I'm against the warmongers. Kamala's a warmonger. Liz Cheney's a warmonger. I'm against the warmongers, which is why I picked a warmonger to be my Secretary of State, and why he's openly saying we're going to overthrow Venezuela in his confirmation hearing. Trump sanctioned Venezuela during his first term. How'd that go, by the way? Oh, that's right. It led to more people fleeing and coming here, which you then also complained about. Weird. But it's unclear what the president-elect wants to do to push Maduro out of office. Trump's interest in regime change in Venezuela has been heightened by President Biden's last-minute decision Tuesday to loosen U.S. restrictions on Cuba, whose socialist regime Trump sees as the hub of Latin America's problems. That's hilarious. Blaming Cuba for are you kidding me? Also, by the way, I'm happy Biden loosened restrictions on Cuba, but that's something he could have done day one, and he didn't. Right? And by the way, the only reason the Democrats aren't all in on hey, let's normalize with Cuba. The only reason is that they think, Florida's a swing state and we don't want to piss off the Cubans there and get more of them to vote Republican. So let's be careful on this issue. But now Florida's not even a swing state anymore. It's going gonzo. It's just a red state. There is no excuse anymore for Democratic presidents to try to do the fucking old school Cold War vindictiveness with Cuba because we tried to overthrow them and it didn't fucking work. You realize how insane that is? We tried to overthrow them, it didn't work, and we are still holding a grudge years later about it. Now, Obama normalized, that was based. Biden could have. He did the last minute on the way out the door. He should have done it day one. There's no reason. The idea that what do we have to fear from Cuba? Is there radical Cuban terrorism coming to Cleveland any day now? This is fucking ridiculous. This country's a joke, the way that we act. It's a joke. It's not sustainable, the Trump advisor involved with foreign policy talks said of the situation in Venezuela. Well, who the fuck are you to say what is or isn't? Who are you? Why do you get to say the future for the Venezuelan people? Maduro is literally ruining the country. What about our sanctions? Anything to say about our sanctions? Massive refugee issues sending criminals to the United States. Oil production is down, and there are Chinese, Russians, and Cubans there. This is a joke. These are the warmongers. These are the warmongers that are going to be in Trump's administration. Oil, by the way, notice that? That's a slick line, right? Oil production is down. Oh, did we stumble across the thing this is really about, ladies and gentlemen? Is that what we stumbled across? Trump's interest in Venezuela is part of a broader emerging national security policy that's anything but the isolationist model his America First theme often has seemed to project. Oh, no shit. Especially when it comes to the Western Hemisphere. Since the November election, Trump has renewed his interest in acquiring Greenland or expanding the U.S. presence there for strategic reasons. He also threatened to take back the Panama Canal, and then, of course, he's been threatening Canada, threatening Mexico. You guys have seen this. He is a warmonger. The idea he's not a warmonger is ridiculous. His first term proved it, and the things he's saying this time around prove it, and they're getting into specifics in terms of how to do war with both Mexico and Iran for both of them. So here you go. They're going to do it again. Of all America first. This is what they said, right? And now look at this. We've given you detailed and specific stories about how they want to do war with Mexico, what they're debating internally about that, how they want to do war with Iran, and now how they want to do regime change in Cuba, in Venezuela in a covert sense. I mean, what is there to say? MAGA is a fraud through and through. Nothing has ever been more clear. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.